No HVAC contractor gets into business to deal with insurance. But if you're gearing up for it here in Maryland and you got tools and you got techs and trucks, you got a budget for it. So in this video, I'm going to break it down line by line so you can budget for insurance for a business like yourself. Let's get into it. So let's start with a little bit of a reality check. Insurance for HVAC contractors isn't guesswork. It typically has a range by line. So on general liability insurance, it might be rated based off of number of techs, but a lot of times it's payroll, it's subcontracted receipts. For vehicles, it's going to be driven by the number of vehicles and how big they are and how heavy they are. And on workers' compensation, it's based off the type of work you do and your annual payroll. So when we're trying to create frameworks for how much you're going to pay, we have to boil it down to those kinds of factors. How does the insurance company rate you and measure you so that you can build out some estimates based on the size of your organization? All right, starting with general liability insurance for HVAC contractors. Most insurance companies rate it on payroll or the number of techs. So, to give you a framework, Simply Business shows that HVAC pros pay about $55 a month or around $650 a year, where Money Geek says the national average is higher, closer to $246 a month. So, look, here's a rule. If one tech costs about $600 to $1,000 a year, then 10 techs might run $6,000 to $10,000 a year. You're going to see some economies of scale, but multiplying per head does give you a quick way to check whether or not you're paying the right number and you're in the right ballpark. Now, remember, cost depends a lot on what kind of work you do. A crew handling high rise installs with cranes is going to pay something very different than a tech working on HVAC units in people's homes. Same goes for industrial versus light commercial. But if you want a starting estimate, take your head count for techs and then multiply it by $600 to $1,000 per year. That'll get you close. For commercial auto insurance, most HVAC contractors typically have a fleet of service vehicles, and those vehicles typically run about $2,500 a unit right now in Maryland. You can give or take some based on where you are and how far you drive. So if you're in Western Maryland, you may be able to get $1,500 to $1,800. But if you're closer to DC or Baltimore, it's probably going to stick around $2,500 and up just because you're more likely to be in an accident. Now, if you've got bigger trucks or heavier trucks, that's going to drive up your liability insurance. And if you've got some specifically expensive vehicles, that's going to drive up your comprehensive and collision. But general rule of thumb for a service vehicle that you're driving around town, about $2,000 to $2,500 per vehicle. Now, for your workers' compensation insurance. In Maryland in 2025, HVAC contractors are averaging around $2.50 to $3 for every $100 of payroll. Now, that range is going to depend on a few things. First off, it's going to depend on the kind of work you do. If you're doing rooftop installs or heavy boilers or high rise projects, you're going to end up paying more because that's riskier work. It's also going to depend a lot on your claims history. If insurance companies look at your track record and you've got a history of ladder claims or lifting claims, they're going to want you to pay more. But if your claims history is better, you're going to have more leverage with the marketplace. And also, the third thing that's going to impact how much you pay is how it's been marketed and how it's been managed by your broker. If it's been marketed too much, probably not getting the best consideration. If it's not been marketed enough or hasn't been given a great story, you're probably going to pay too much. So it's really important to have a good strategy. But as a general rule of thumb, for every $100 of payroll, be looking for $2.50 to $3. And if you're running $600,000 in payroll, expect something like $15,000 to $18,000 a year for workers' comp. Now, if you watch my video, HVAC Insurance 101, you know there are other coverages worth looking at, like umbrella or cyber or employment practices liability insurance. Umbrella is usually driven by your fleet. The more vehicles you run, the more exposure you have, and the more likely you are to have a multi-million-dollar claim. Cyber insurance is typically based on revenue, and for most small HVAC shops, you can figure on $1,000 to $3,000, And employment practices liability is tied to headcount and turnover. And the more employees you have, the more you're going to pay in premium. Those are the main add ons that go beyond the basics. And I just wanted to give you a framework for what they'll cost you. If you've been adding up these numbers and thinking, I'm paying more than that, here are reasons why you might be paying more. One, competition. And this depends a lot on who you're with, but if you're with a direct carrier like State Farm or Erie or Federated, they're not going to bid against themselves. So if you haven't been bringing in competition to keep them accountable, costs may have been inflated. If you're with an independent agent, it may just be that they haven't been working really hard to try and keep costs down and create competition for you. So over time, if there isn't a strategy to create competition for your account, your prices will gradually inflate. Two, type of work. If you're doing riskier jobs, I keep saying high rise installs or industrial plants or working with cranes, that's going to make your insurance more expensive because there's going to be less companies interested in insuring you. Your claims history is going to matter a lot. If insurance companies think they can't make money on you, they're either going to decline to quote your business or they're just going to ask for a lot more money. And lastly, where you work matters a lot. Maryland's generally pretty good, but if you're bidding in jobs with heavy litigation cultures like Philadelphia or certain parts of Georgia, for example, you're going to see higher premiums. So if you're on the high side, it's usually one or more of those issues: competition, work type, claims history, or geography. And that pretty well brings this to a close. If this has you thinking about your insurance program and your broker relationship, and you want to talk to me about it, my contact information is going to flash on the screen here in a minute. If this was helpful, please hit like and subscribe. It helps other people like you find the content. And if you've got specific questions, you just want to drop it in the comments, please go ahead and do that. As always, thank you so much for watching, and please go build something great.